嗨，大家好，我是老外，欢迎收看ITA看世界，一起看世界。
大家好，我是杜希。在今天节目的一开始，要带大家来关心的是原住民族高等教育的发展。
好的，部落的传统知识一直是我们原住民族人世代相传的珍贵资产，但也因为在不同殖民政府之下，不仅被迫，也单一的接受一次又一次的外来的教育，让这些传统知识跟智慧是出现了流失的危机。
没错，面对这样流失的焦虑呢，来自澳洲、美国、加拿大、挪威等等地区的原住民教育学者，在2002年开始呢，从世界原住民族教育会议到现在的世界原住民族高等教育论坛 WINHEG， 积极的发展属于原住民族自己的教育体制，并且是在2012年成立了世界原住民族大学 WINU。
就在今年的7月底 ，WINHEG 会员大会是移师到台湾来举办，而我们的主持人 Duki 也特别前往这个会议的现场进行专题的访问，精彩的内容透过ITA的镜头一起来了解。
Duki 马杜高古兰，各位观众朋友晚安，我是 Duki。Here we're at the board meeting at the WINHEG. We have our special guest to explain to us what is in WINHEG and why they are here, and also with WINHEG, actually there are already some of the achievements that we are trying to also to construct. So maybe later our special guest here with us will share more about what is WINHEG and also what are the achievements, and also what can we be expecting in the future. So can I have the honor to have you introduce yourself first, Bonnie?
I'm Professor Bonnie Robertson from Kabi Nation in Australia, an Aboriginal woman from Australia. I currently am on the executive committee of WINHEG and also on the committee for WINU, the World Indigenous Nations University. And my full-time position is Professor of Indigenous Policy at Griffith University in Australia.
Yes, hello, my name is Dr. Beresaning. I'm also from Australia. My matrilineal Aboriginal lineage is from the Toowoomba Tablelands area in southern Queensland and going out to south-west Queensland. So that's the Kinjin people, the Gambiwal, the Bidjara and the Gomeroi. So I have a long lineage in my matrilineal Aboriginal lineage. I'm here at this meeting because I'm a member of the WINHEG. I've been with WINHEG since 2003, and through that period of time, my colleague here, Professor Robertson, and two other colleagues who are not here were the ones to write the framework for the World Indigenous Nations University. And so I'm, at this point in time, the Regional Director for the Australian Pacific area. And the WINU was birthed as a sovereign university, not tied to government funding, not tied to any corporation, but tied to their sovereignty and the rights of Indigenous peoples to be able to record, to research, to record their knowledge for their communities or their families and for Indigenous people across the world, so that we could have our own institution without the constraints of the Western model of funding and of control.
Great. Thank you.
My name's Alana Renneman. I'm an Anaiwan woman, which is an Indigenous tribe from Australia. I'm currently a law student at Macquarie University.
My name's Elijah Ingram. I'm a Wiradjuri man from Australia as well, currently studying a Bachelor's of Speech, Hearing and Language Science at Macquarie University in Sydney, and I'm hoping to become a speech pathologist, specialising in early childhood and Indigenous languages.
So welcome again. And so even though you've already briefly mentioned about the idea of WINU, but still can we first come back to WINHEG? Because maybe for our audience, they don't really know about WINHEG. So about like around what time WinHEC started and why there's this kind of it's like alliance among indigenous academy around the world, right? Can you just tell us about what is WinHEC and why there's this kind of alliance?
Well, WinHEC stands for the World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium, and it emanated from WIPSI, the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education, in 2002, and it really emanated from a group of elders, Indigenous scholars, knowledge holders, wanting to take the concept of WIPSI, not just being a 3-year conference, but giving life to the text and tenor of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as it pertained to the sovereign rights of our peoples across the world, Indigenous peoples across the world, to have education that is culturally inclusive, culturally responsive, and to afford Indigenous peoples across the world the ability to engage in an education that does respect the scholarship of Indigenous knowledge, that is inclusive of elders and knowledge holders, and affords our young people the opportunity to acquire an education, a higher education, that is both culturally and Western inclusive. And so it's been a long journey. I mean, myself and my colleague here are really the babies of the journey. We've walked and worked with some amazing people. Dr. Turo Royal from New Zealand, Dr. Jan Henry Keskatala from Sami, Dr. Rungo Witeri from New Zealand, Dr. Lionel Bordeaux from America. These are but a few of the people. Dr. Berlian from Hawaii, Dr. Peter Honahonu. These are all people who in their own right were quite significant scholars, and they could have spent their whole lives just working in mainstream universities, and I don't like the word mainstream universities, but in Western universities, and just live their lives comfortably, but they saw that there was a need for a more culturally inclusive way of affording our people access to education and allowing them to progress through education. One of the big concerns was the number of young Indigenous people not progressing through the Western education system, and a number of cultural postgraduate students who were dropping by the way, who were falling by the way because they found that there was no cultural inclusivity or respect by the people who were their supervisors. So it wasn't just, a thought that just was there, and it was really quite a concerted approach. And so what they did was they went out and they really did a lot of consultation with First Nations peoples, both in their own countries and also at the Indigenous Permanent Forum in New York. And so that took place over several years, and they listened to the people, and they thought of, how could they address the issues that were raised by the people in a concerted effort that everybody, all of our people across the world, could buy into. And so that's where the World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium came from. And it really emanated when UNESCO met with that group of people that I've just mentioned, and said, if the Western education system isn't meeting the needs of your people, then we will give you the support to go out and seek a framework that might be more culturally responsive. So they did that. And so over the years, there's been quite a number of people come forward, and first of all, they looked at the sequence of what needed to happen. And so they realised that one of the biggest impediments was getting culturally inclusive programs accredited through Western universities. And so they set up, under Dr. Ray Bernard from Fairbanks University in Alaska, the International Board of Accreditation. Now, that Board of Accreditation has gone on now, and there have been, many First Nations tribal colleges and universities who have been accredited, so now they can be measured by both Western and cultural standards. And there have been many non-Indigenous institutions who have sought accreditation, but there's a process for that. So then they looked at developing a suite of academic programs, but that led to the notion that we really need to have our own research standards. So our good colleague, Professor Veronica Arbin from Australia, chaired the Research Working Party, and she and our colleagues developed the International WINHEC research standards. Now, those research standards weren't just, taken up and then endorsed by WINHEC. Again, they were taken back to the Permanent Forum, negotiated with many, many Indigenous peoples at the Permanent Forum, and then once they gave the endorsement, the International Board of WINHEC endorsed it as well. And Beres, Dr. Anning here, chaired the Academic Working Party, and that really morphed into something that was much more than any of us ever imagined. And so we were working on a suite of academic programs when we realised that a lot of our people needed to engage in collaborative research to address many of the social anomalies that Western researchers were writing about our people in terms of social justice, health, education, social issues. And so they decided that to give life to the text and tenor of the UniDrip, and also to give carriage to the WINHEC research standards, we needed a global body. And so out of that discussion came the World Indigenous Research Alliance, which is now co-chaired by Dr. Paul Fitanui and Dr. Onawa MacGyver from Victoria University in Canada. Then in 2013, we had a meeting a WINHEC meeting at Navajo University in New Mexico, and the World Indigenous Nations University was launched. Now, that World Indigenous Nations University was launched on the collaborative thesis of 4 Australians, myself, Beres, Veronica, and a colleague called Dr. Gary Thomas, and it provided the foundational work, the foundational structure for the development of a World Indigenous Nations University. And then quite apart from that, we also set up the International Global Elders Alliance to help work with our young people, to help with that cultural transition. And so all of the things that have been established by WINHEC over the last 17 years, has all been for a purpose, responding to the pleas from First Nations peoples from across the world. And before I hand it over to my colleagues, the most exciting thing is we've had our first cohort of graduates from the World Indigenous Nations University, and that was just recently from Sami University in Norway. And so they're the people that were responsible for that are here with us today. So this is an amazing journey that we've been on, and huge legacies have been left. And it's important that we have younger people come along on that journey so that there's an immediate transition amongst the people who are participating. So I might hand over, shall I, to Dr. Anning, and she can then explain WINU, like she did before.
I would like to, maybe it's not that relevant now, but with this, the title of the WINU, I think it's quite interesting because you choose Indigenous nations instead of Indigenous peoples or other terms. Is that also because you mentioned about sovereignty?
Yes.
Is that because of that?
Yes, absolutely, yes. So the WINU is unique in that it's been established on, the foundation has been the sovereignty of the first Indigenous peoples of the nations. And we wanted to have something that was our own, that couldn't be controlled outside of our nations, and that the knowledge was our knowledge, it was our unique knowledge and the people's knowledge, and that we could protect that knowledge in terms of establishing WINU. So Professor Robertson was talking about in 2013 it was birthed out at Navajo Tribal College when we were there, and it was based on the the collaborative thesis that myself and Professor Robertson and my other two colleagues wrote together, and that was because of our work within WINHEC. So it was birthed from all of the discussions that came out of WINHEC and what the nations were talking about was needed. And so it was like our spirits just took a hold of us and helped us to write that whole framework of the thesis. And it was about sustaining Indigenous leadership into the 21st century. And it was to be delivered in a virtual world. Not that, because we're all over the place. We're all across different nations, so we couldn't be always in one place. And so it was looking at how do we also have partnerships with each other. How do we co-badge? And so our work within our own universities gave us that framework of, well, we needed to make sure that the programs were to be, that they could be accredited without any issues under a Western model of accreditation, but it had the higher level of cultural knowledge. And the assessment that would take place would be based on cultural standards that were established within the framework. So it's a unique established university, the WINU, for Indigenous peoples. And it's also too, it's not about undergraduate programs and our people progressing through, say, an undergraduate degree through to a PhD. We would have our elders and our communities who needed their knowledge to be recorded to have a younger student to work with them to help record that, but they would be a part of that whole, Doctor of Philosophy or a Master's, whichever level. So we were looking at the higher levels of research that would allow our people to bring that knowledge and to have that recorded in a collaborative way, if not individually, and then to have that recorded not just for themselves, but maybe for their families, because it could be about their whole journey and their ancestral knowledge and how that was to be maintained for the next generation or two as they were growing older. So WINU is very unique, absolutely very unique, and it's something that we are very proud of being able to provide to First Nations people, not just in Australia but across the world. In Australia, we don't have tribal colleges like the other countries have. We have a Bachelor Institute for Indigenous Education in the Northern Territory, but that's mostly for the Northern Territory people, and it's only at vocational level of training. It's and some of their research of Indigenous knowledge. And so we needed to have something in Australia where our people could come to WINU in their own right, but obviously having partnerships with other universities, Indigenous tribal colleges is the important part of the co-badging. And so my role in Australia is to work with the people in my community, and there's a vast number of Indigenous peoples across Australia, and those who don't want to go to a mainstream university, who prefer to make sure that their knowledge is protected for themselves and their people and their families and their tribes, means that WINU is the vehicle that can do that. And so we're on that journey, and like Professor Robertson said, we've got the first cohort out of the Sami University of Applied Sciences that's just graduated this year, and we're looking at how do we develop further programs unique to our people's needs in our country. In Australia, the people are asking for an Indigenous law degree, not a law degree based on the Western common law model, but one around customary law, around them knowing their rights as Indigenous peoples in their own country, and particularly in Australia where we don't have treaties. Indigenous peoples are still sovereign in their own right. And so that's going to be a program that we can see happening into the future. And our elders want to be a part of that. They want to understand more about how does customary law work alongside or rebuts common law within the Western system. So we've got a long way to go, but we're on that journey together.
I think
Yeah.
a lot of the audience now will be very much looking forward to it because
Yes.
that's something we also very much in need in Taiwan now. So although we do have like here in Donghua University, they have this indigenous college, but still it's under a Western system. And although we try to integrate like different knowledges and also worldview, but of course under this kind of system we are still constrained in somehow, like, and also sometimes even for the faculties themselves, like the professors themselves, I think they are also constrained because they want to pass the knowledge with certain, like with their indigenous way, but under this system they cannot.
That's
So I
right,
think
yes.
with WINU it's not only good for the student but also for
Good.
faculties.
Yes.
I think that will
Yes.
be
Yes.
something very much that we can
Yes.
we can also incorporate like our professional with our cultural heritage.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.